If you look around us now, a lot of people, when I initially started, they were like, why do you have a degree in robotics and public health? It makes no sense. But now, if you look at any conference or any talk, all we talk about is AI and public health. Right? So health is important. That's a human need, but technology is what we can use to accelerate, elevate someone's life, and also use that to perform better policies, to improve healthcare, to improve management, operations, anything you think about a hospital system or even the government functionings, tech can help. So my advice for any public health expert or person in the field would be to at least get some understanding on how technology works and how they can use that as a tool to elevate whatever they're doing and to accelerate that process.
This is the Public Health Millennial Career Stories podcast, where you'll hear about diverse career stories, career strategies, get tips, and learn from others to help you in your public health career journey. If you want to learn about public health careers, or just hear public health stories, stay tuned because you won't want to miss this. Welcome to the Public Health Millennial Career Stories podcast, episode number 78. Hi everyone, Omari Richards here. Thank you all so much for joining me once again. Greatly appreciate it. Be sure to follow me on Instagram at the PH Millennial. Be sure to subscribe to this podcast, whether you're on a podcast platform or on YouTube. Like it, leave a review, share with a friend. Greatly appreciate it. Greatly helps the show get out to more people to help them navigate their public health careers. And if you would like, you can go to buymeacoffee.com/the PH Millennial and support there. I'm also going to put a link to other ways you can support. So check that out if you are interested. But today's episode, very interesting, very untraditional public health story. And I think these are the ones that I enjoy more sharing with you all, just because it gives you all a different perspective on what you can do and the different interesting paths that you can take to get to where you want to be in public health, as well as how the varied skill sets that you gain throughout your careers come together to make you more of a better candidate for these specific type rules or whatever the case might be. But needless to say, I enjoyed this podcast episode, and I think that you all are going to get a lot of value from it as well. And be sure to hold me accountable. But without further ado, enjoy the show. Today, we have a public health professional driven by passion and focus on impact. She is an experienced business development, sales, and marketing executive with 7+ years of experience at the intersection of healthcare, technology, and innovation. She got a bachelor's in research and robotics at Carnegie Mellon University, then got a Master of Science in Engineering Management at the University of Southern California. She also has her Master of Science in Public Health from the University of California, Los Angeles. She works as a business strategist at Tata Consultancy Services. We have Smriti Kirubanandan, MS, MSPH, aka Simi. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for the warm introduction. It's a pleasure to be here and join you in the podcast.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to tell your story. And I don't think I've ever had anyone with a robotics type of background or anything of that sort. So I'm really excited to hear more about your perspectives on how you came to know public health and all of that as well. So tell me how you're doing and how you've been coping during these times.
I'm good. As much as we're all trying to adjust and find new ways of living nowadays, I'm doing the same, doing a lot of yoga. Definitely working a lot, and I think spending a lot of time with family and loved ones. So doing good. I'm hoping you're good as well on your end. And
Yeah, I'm doing well as well. I usually do yoga with a group on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and I have not been doing that for a while. And then I missed my alarm this morning, so I didn't get to do it. But I'm looking forward to getting back into that groove of doing more yoga and just being more in my body, because I really enjoyed that and getting into that routine over the pandemic. So I appreciate you sharing that as well.
Of course.
And tell me, how do you identify? And then tell us a little bit about your personal background.
So I'm identified as used to be an engineer gone hippie, because I'm also a certified raw vegan chef and nutritionist. I think I'm more of a hybrid, a generalist. I would say I have a lot of passions, as anyone could see. I'm curious. I would say I'm morely on the highly empathetic side. And my personal background is I was born in India, then moved to the States for undergrad and grad school. Come from a family filled with doctors and engineers and politicians. So I was raised with a lot of ambition and drive to serve. So that's kind of, I think, subconsciously and consciously now represented, reflected on the career choices and education choices I've made, which is very much an impact and giving back for service. If that answered your question.
Yeah, absolutely does. And I'm going to ask a little bit more about that, but I'll ask you, what does public health mean to you first?
An individual health accumulated is public health. And I think everyone has different ways of reflecting or relating to what public health is. But I think it kind of zooms in and focuses on mostly how much accountability and responsibility an individual takes, but also how much infrastructure support. How do we support our individuals and allow them to be empowered and address foundational blocks? So public health is not, I think, just about health. It also revolves around the entire ecosystem, which is economy, education, transportation, you name every other factor which impacts one's mental and physical health. I think that kind of extrapolates into the accumulation of what a public health looks like.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And I think, like, growing up, we usually just think about health as in the sense of, oh, I'm going to go to the doctor because that's what healthy people do, or you go there when you have an illness. But as we've learned in like public health, and as we've learned just how important it is, all these other societal factors and the infrastructure, as you said, that's around us, that supports or doesn't support our optimal health and wealth, and everything there. And I think like economics is a huge part of public health, and I think it's a part that a lot of public health professionals just in public health kind of lack, which kind of makes it hard for them to advocate for these like large scale things because they don't understand the economics of it. But that's for a whole different conversation. Keeping you here. So you said you grew up in India until undergrad. Was I correct in hearing that?
Yes.
Okay, where in India did you grow up?
So it was southeast, more south, as in Mumbai, and then in Madras, India. So that's where Kamala Harris is from, if anyone wants to relate more to where I come from.
Okay, awesome. And growing up, you said that you had a lot of politicians and just people who helped out their community and supported community in a lot of different ways. Was that something that you took part in, whether that's like volunteering or just actively engaging with your family members?
I think my family was definitely very much involved in the nonprofit sector. They gave back a lot, but I think coming from a family with politicians, I think there was a definite drive to understand, the country problems, the city problems, and how they were, running for policy and working to get, the buy-in of the system in order to, make an impact. So I didn't take part in politics, but I grew up around that environment. So I saw a lot of, obviously, the pros and the cons of it. But definitely what stuck to me was being very patient, compassionate, and we are definitely accountable for every action we take as an individual, because that has an impact on the public. So that's kind of was ingrained at a very young age.
Yeah, and I think like everything you're saying there is like what a lot of people do before they get into this type of public health work, or they just understand or they see people that are doing this kind of community work. And I feel like there's so many different levels to public health and getting impacted in public health. So when you were growing up in India and doing all these things and having all this family around you, did you know that you wanted to go to undergrad in the US?
Yes. So most of my family, most of my cousins and, the later generation is in the US. So that was part of the package, I would say. So yes, I think that was given.
All right. So you got your bachelor's degree of science in research and computer engineering or robotics at Carnegie Mellon University. So tell me about that thought process.
I was fascinated about how humans viewed computers, how they view technology, and how it impacted them, and how things were designed keeping human interaction in mind. So my basic attraction to robotics was more about the human psychology, and eventually it became about the systems and how we created innovation and technology to go out of space, and also working around, a lot of tech leaders and business people kind of made me understand how we can use technology as a tool, but to also use human psychology to, make more creative solutions and impact the world.
Okay, yeah, so that's a very unique perspective. It's not one that I hear enough, but I think that's really cool. And I think like that in a field of itself is something that people don't think about, like all this technology, especially now, especially as we're engaging more in technological work, and our lives are just being taken over by technology. Like Facebook just changed to metaverse, which is a whole nother augmented reality type thing, which is going to have both, I think, positive and negative effects on humans. And I don't even know where I was going with this, but I just appreciate that it was a unique uh, degree in itself. So, did you have any takeaways from this degree?
Yes, I think technology is a tool, and I think it will always be a tool. It's not a means to an end. And I think we should always remember that we as humans need emotions, touch, we have a psychological impact. And keeping that experience in mind, I think we should all be involved in technology to improve human experiences in life and not, become, more of. I was about to say, I'm hoping that the takeaway would be that we use technology as a tool, as a means to an end, and not as something which we focus as the end goal. I think the most important goal is how do we make humans and the environment a better place and more sustainable and create an impact using technology. The takeaway from that is be curious, keep learning, understand where the innovation is, and keep ahead of the curve in order to make an impact in the tech world and the healthcare world.
Okay. And it seems like there's some, I don't know if you're familiar with human-centered design or design thinking. It seems like there's a lot of that in your degree, or at least like looking back on it now in your perspective of your degree. Is Are people taking this degree in research and computer engineering thinking mostly about these things, or are they thinking just about like the tech stuff?
I think there is a hybrid. Obviously, there are people who are coding, who are working primarily on the tech stuff. Then there are also people who work on the human interaction, the UI side of a technology, right? So that's when you start thinking about how does a human view an app or a product or a service? What is the interaction? Where do the eyes go? How do we predict their behaviors? All that part, I think, comes into psychology, right? So, for example, we go to a store, we buy something, then we use technology to predict, is the person going to buy a plate with a cup? Like, how do you predict that? How do you promote ad? How do you promote sales? I think obviously technology has improved and still evolving. I think, but psychology and human customer experience plays a very vital role, I think, horizontally, and when someone's creating product now as well. So I think it's still a hybrid.
Okay. And then my last question about this. So there have a lot of people in public health who listen to this, who are like more traditional public health people. What advice would you give them to like get involved in like this tech space of public health, or like just health in general?
If you look around us now, a lot of people, when I initially started, they were like, why do you have a degree in robotics and public health? It makes no sense. But now, if you look at any conference or any talk, all we talk about is AI and public health. There's nothing, which goes anywhere different than those two topics, right? So health is important. That's a human need, but technology is what we can use to accelerate, elevate someone's life, and also use that to perform better policies, to improve healthcare, to improve management, operations, anything you think about a hospital system or even the government functionings, tech can help. So my advice for any public health expert or person in the field would be to, to at least get some understanding on how technology works and how they can use that as a tool to elevate whatever they're doing and to accelerate that process.
Some good insights there. And then after you graduated from your bachelor's, you went on to get your master's of science in engineering management at the University of Southern California. So tell me, what's that thought process coming out of undergrad with your degree in research in computer science and going into this?
Yeah, so I definitely didn't want to go into a field which is pure coding. I'm a very people person. I love talking to people. So though I enjoyed the curiosity and the innovation behind robotics, I definitely didn't want to sit on my laptop and be coding all day long. So I want to be people facing. So then I figured that, then I discovered engineering management, because back then it was still a very new field, at least to me. And it was a perfect combination of MBA, but also engineering. So most of the courses were from finance, accounting, understanding team management, conflict management. So it's basically a course on if you had to become a CEO of a tech company, you would understand technology, you would understand how to run a team effectively, how do you handle finance accounting, also how do you create innovation. So engineering management within USC's department was basically a concentration of that.
Okay, and did you have a concentration in that degree, or are they concentrations in the Masters of Science in Engineering?
So it fell under the Viterbi Engineering Department, so it falls under industrial engineering. So anyone who walks out of that generally would land a job as a consultant in PwC or McKinsey.
Okay, that is good to know. It's very interesting because reading this, I wouldn't think that is like the skills and the things that you're learning from a Masters of Science in Engineering Management, but I could see how useful that would be in like tech space, as well as like merging public health or just leading all of that kind of working behind the scenes. So that is awesome, and it's not a degree that I hear many people talk about. So I'm gonna look more into it and see what more that Masters of Science in Engineering Management has in store. That's awesome. Did you have any other takeaways from this degree?
I think it was a very fascinating combination because I learned law, I learned F&A. It was more of a introduction into the business world, on the different elements of a business world. So I found it very fascinating. So anyone who's interested in understanding how the business side of any organization works, I think this is a perfect graduate degree to get into. And also the networking was pretty brilliant, because you find people from all parts of the world, and also MBA students and people senior up in their career actually attending the grad school program to elevate their positions.
Okay. What was most challenging about getting this degree? Because you're seeing like doing like finances and then like team management and all these different like skill sets and things that people get hired to do, like specifically for one company. What was most challenging in learning these different things?
I think the most challenging to me was kind of trying to place where I needed to focus at that point. Because I think at that stage, there was interest in tech and getting into the management position. I think I was still trying to waffle around where exactly I needed to focus, but I was still very much a generalist. So I focused more on the innovation. I loved law at that point. Teams management, but I struggled with, I would definitely say, stats, F&A. I think that's where the struggle was, to kind of pinpoint and focus on where I needed to move forward.
Okay. And that's a good like point of self-reflection. What is F&A?
Finance and accounting.
Okay. Just making sure we're all on the same page here.
Right.
Yeah, that does make sense. And I also did struggle because during my MPH we did like healthcare finance, and that was a whole different ball game in itself. I'm glad that I don't have to do any of that kind of work anymore. But I learned a lot about how health systems work and how they get paid for their work and all those different types of cool models that they work out with. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. And so going through this degree, what were you thinking you would do afterwards? Did you know what you would do afterwards, or how did that thought process go about for you?
So I did not know exactly. I did go through a lot of interviews and got some offers, and I definitely intuitively knew that I didn't want to work in an organization at that point. I started a yoga studio back in 2010, ran that for maybe two plus years. And I was very much into the raw vegan lifestyle, and I wanted to coach people into leading a healthy lifestyle and focusing more on nutrition. So that's what I did. So I think I followed my gut, and that's where I wanted to explore and expand and put myself out there. So that's what I did for 2010, I believe, till 2013.
Okay, I want to talk a little bit more about that then. So you said you started a yoga studio. Tell me what got you like excited to start a yoga studio?
So long story short, I was a long distance runner. I used to do a lot of marathons, half marathons. I got a shin splint one day, and someone was like, you need to go stretch. You need to go to a yoga class. And, I'm a typical type A person. If I like something that I'm committed and full in, there's no gray area for me. So I went to a yoga class, and it was great. So I went for a couple more classes, and then I was introduced to something called the Ashtanga yoga, which is a very traditional format of practicing 6 times a week. And you practice for at least 1.5 hours a day. every day. So I got introduced into that, and I really liked the dedication, the commitment, and then I was like, why not? I feel like I'm giving back, and I had a bigger sense of volunteering and giving back and serving people, which I still do, but at that point it was very heightened. So I just wanted to go ahead and follow my intuition. So that's pretty much what I did for a few years. And it was a great experience.
Did you have to get certified to teach people in that, or was it just like you? Thank you for sharing that, and that's awesome that you had a yoga studio for 2 years. That's cool. And then you also mentioned, and I was going to ask more about this later on, but since you brought this up, I'm just going to bring it up now. You got into being a raw vegan chef. So, firstly, I'm going to ask, were you vegan all your life, or most of your life, or?
I was mostly vegetarian, I would say, as a kid. But when I started running, when I was an undergrad, actually, I didn't know how to cook. The real story is I didn't know how to cook. So then I came across a famous vegan athlete who's right now in Malibu called Rich Roll. And I followed his recipes. It was basically making smoothies and shakes. And I thought, why not? So I started, for a couple of days, a couple of weeks. And then by the time I knew, for 2 years, all I did was, just have raw vegan food. So when I moved to LA from Pittsburgh, someone was like, "Oh, you're mostly raw vegan," and then I didn't realize what that was. I got into that, and I enjoyed how I had more energy, and it transformed my body, transformed my physical performance in running, how I felt, how I would get up every day with more energy. So I've been raw vegan for about, now I would say, 13 years. So now I'm not 100% raw vegan now. I would say at least 75 to 80%. But I went to Culinary School to get certified as a raw vegan chef.
Okay. And that's really cool that like you just found this vegan athlete online and you was doing shakes and other raw vegan stuff, and you're like, oh, I can do this. And it makes you feel a lot better. Like I'm definitely myself a lot very plant-based. I don't know if I would say it's 80%, maybe like 75-70% plant-based. I would think so. But yeah, I definitely do see like the benefits in that, plus just the environmental aspect of it. I think it's like an act against the systems that we live in, just being like plant-based in a lot of ways. But that's a whole different conversation once again. So you said that you went to culinary school. When did you go to culinary school?
It was, I believe, 2013. So it was right after the studio. I had some more time before I went back to corporate world. So that was 2013.
Okay. And was the studio in Los Angeles too, or was that in Pittsburgh?
It was in Los Angeles, Culver City.
Okay. And did you move from Pittsburgh to Los Angeles for school?
Yeah, for grad school.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. A really complicated roadmap, but yeah.
No, I love like breaking it down, especially when it's like these unique things that you don't really hear people talk about doing in their journeys. And I was like, you did this for 2 years, you did this other thing, and like now you're doing all these other great things. And I think people sometimes get stuck in their head that they have to do everything in this one path to get to where they want to get to. But I think there's so much value in learning and understanding different things and trying out different things and just being happy with living life how it should be, in a lot of different senses. So I appreciate you sharing that, because that's usually helpful to someone who might be thinking if they want to start a yoga studio after they graduate from their Masters of Public Health or something like that. Like, yeah, do it. Why not?
Yeah, I think growth is non-linear, and being expansive, especially in the younger years. I think for me personally, it wasn't something of regret. It was definitely a growth opportunity and something I'm really grateful for.
So after your Masters of Science, after your yoga studio, I'm guessing you're still a raw vegan chef. So not after that, you were a product and marketing manager at Trifecta Foods. So how do you come across that job?
So after the yoga studio and the raw vegan chef, it obviously put me in a different, group of people. So I still wanted to keep the culinary thing in the pipeline. So Trifecta Foods was basically a Sunkist subdivision or a licensed partner, where they created healthy snacks and trail mixes and products. So I felt like I could bring in my chef skills, my marketing techniques, and obviously people relationships to them. So that's kind of the role I picked, which I thought would be exciting and put me back into the corporate world as well.
Okay. And did you get this role from friends? Did you have to apply for it? What was that process like for you?
Actually, I got it through word of mouth. So it was a one-shot interview, and I was was in.
Awesome to hear. And what did you do as the product and marketing manager?
It was mostly market research, collaborating with the suppliers, making sure the packaging was okay, and also looking to the nutrition and attending trade shows, events, kind of also working like a brand ambassador for the product in some ways.
So did you have any like takeaways coming from like your unique perspective, going to that masters of science and engineering management that you think people can value and take into their roles now, whether that's on the marketing side or on the product side?
I think a lot of that is, yes, definitely the marketing side. I think one of the key points for innovation or sales or, in a public health spectrum is market research, right? So that's also understanding what are the pain points, where are things going strategically, what's the roadmap for sustainability for a product or a solution. So that's a key factor. The other factor is also the psychology behind how a human picks what they pick, and so that's key. I think we can't forget how a human being operates and the choices and the environment. So even with Trifecta Foods, I think one of the biggest things I think about now, which I didn't think about back then, was it sustainable? Was it environmentally friendly? What are the ingredients that were added which were actually not beneficial to a human being, right? But it's still tagged as a healthy snack food. How could we now, where we are now in, with COVID and pre-COVID or post-COVID, how do we look at food in a different way? So when we talk about public health, it's not just, I don't think public health just falls under healthcare management or a health system. It also falls under retail, automobile, every other field, right? So it's still public health. So I think for different organizations, the people even working in different sectors should also focus on the impact they have on one's health.
Okay, yeah, and I appreciate that. And I think it is so important, like when we think of like healthy snacks these days, especially like granola bars and those kinds of things. Like I've stopped eating most granola bars just because it has so much sugar in them. And I feel like we are a culture that's very addicted, or society, I should say, that's very addicted to sugar, and there's just sugar in everything. And then there's a bunch of other things that, as you said, like we don't like. There's this healthy part, and then there's this like, ooh, is it as good as we think it is? But we still have to market to those people and share the benefits that they do get from these different things. But in a whole, as a whole, like industry, the food industry is very, very interesting. And I know that we spoke a bit before about trying to get some like food speakers, panelists on at some later point, and just putting that out so people can hold me accountable. So hopefully we can do that to have more discussions around food systems, because I think food systems is very fascinating, and it like touches all of our lives, because all of us need food to live and survive and be healthy and thrive. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. And then after your time at Trifecta Food, you became a director of business development at Wellness Solutions for One Health Solutions. So what is that, first of all, and then how do you come across it?
It's basically a healthcare app company, which is based in Singapore and India. So I worked there for a couple of years, focused on basically medical record exchange within that population. And obviously the protocols and the legal systems were completely different. So I mostly did product management, which is looking at the UI, the human computer interaction, and also a lot of business development and partnerships, making sure we're partnering with hospitals and fitness centers for their demographic to start using the app in the product creation and getting investors.
And you said it was in Singapore?
Yeah, Singapore and India.
About UI and your focus on UI and tell me about that. The
team was mostly from India, so it was interesting to see how the psychology within that culture and system worked as well. So I think most of the time was spent on focusing on how do we obviously convert sales, make it into sales conversion, and also focusing on what is easier to navigate. How do people get from point A to point Z? So most of the focus was primarily based on quick landing page, quick conversion, and ease of navigation, and also tailoring UI to a senior population and different demographics. And some of the challenges which I faced was understanding the different spectrums of backgrounds people were coming from and who's going to use that, which is completely different from the background which I would face in the States. So that was a big learning curve and a challenge. One of the major focus was obviously seniors was one of the market penetrations was looking into, because seniors were in the hospitals or needed medications. We wanted to make sure their family and friends had access to their medical reports, whether they were in India, in Asia, or outside, so they can proactively help their loved ones get access to healthcare at a very early stage.
Okay, that's awesome. And when you're thinking about UI for seniors, the first thing that comes to my mind is like big fonts. But I'm guessing that is a lot more strategy that goes behind into that. So are there any like big takeaways that you learned from like focusing your user design and user interface on senior populations that you wanted to share?
So yes, big fonts would have been a great idea. Now that you mentioned that, we did not focus on that. But I think the first barrier was obviously, would seniors in that geography, would they use the app? And there was a lot of hesitancy there in using the app. So that was the first barrier we had to cross. And I can't say it was 100% successful, because it's a very traditional system where people just walk in, or they know their doctors, they walk in for appointments. So the health app system is still miles behind, I would say. So that's more of a psychological mind shift that had to be created. So the app was, again, it was a tool, but I think the system still needs to address the psychological mind shift. So in terms of UI, I don't think we actually catered to answer your actual question. We didn't cater to the seniors.
Fair enough. Still always learning, and I think there's still always ways to tailor our designs and our work closer to whatever populations we are working with. Okay, so you're working in between Singapore and India as a director of business development. And then afterwards, you get your Master's of Science in Public Health at the University of California, Los Angeles. So when in your thought process did like this come up? Oh, I want to get my Master's of Science in Public Health. Was that like, tell me when that came up for you?
So I've always worked in nonprofit, given my volunteering time, either teaching yoga, teaching plant-based classes. There was always a sense of wanting to give back. And there's also a very big sense of urgency on giving back and helping. So that's kind of something which I've always run simultaneously. So when I moved back, I started working for an organization called Robotics, which is based in Los Angeles, and they focused on cellular recovery, aging, and was a supplement product. So I worked there as a business development point while I went to UCLA for public health. So I think I got into Chromadex and I thought, okay, this is a cool field where the market penetration is mostly on aging population, making sure we prevent people to be proactively help people lead a healthy lifestyle and address that aging is not something which needs to be done in a poor format, and we could proactively help people. But that kind of made me start thinking about how can I use this work and then add a degree on top of it to eventually address health issues and give back to the community. So then I thought, why not?
So firstly, before I forget, what is market penetration? Because you mentioned that a couple of times.
So market penetration is basically look at either you take a product or a service you have and you think about where does this product or service fit into. For example, you can pick Chromadex's product was called True Niagen, worked on cellular recovery and aging. So the biggest market would be, the senior demographic, right? But then you can also look at the indirect competition they could have, which is, okay, the people, we're all aging, right? So starting the moment we're born, we're aging. So can we start looking at using this product into a younger demographic, not just focusing on the senior given demographic, right? So the market penetration would be younger demographic, sports line. Penetration basically means how do we enter different areas and different demographic of people and make an impact.
Okay, thank you for sharing that, because I think it's a term that's more used in like the health tech space than like in public health. But I'm trying to get my public health people more intertwined with all the health tech words and jargon, because I think there's a lot of opportunities for them to get involved in that. And then another question that I wanted to ask, like a long while ago that I forgot to ask, is you said that you weren't very like interested in coding and using like different softwares. So you got your Master's of Science in Public Health. Did you think about getting your MPH or was the MSPH the thing that was in your mind?
So the MPH was within the one I got was specifically in healthcare management. So it's heavily focused on obviously public health research, how does it impact more strategically on the business side of the healthcare system. So that was the focus. I don't believe, so I did my EMPH at UCLA, so it was an executive program.
So you start your Master's of Public Health at University of California, Los Angeles. Did you have a concentration?
Yes, it was mostly on healthcare policy and management.
Okay, and why did you choose that concentration?
Because I knew I wanted to work in the service line industry, which is obviously hospitals, healthcare system. And to me, I also wanted to have a integration of understanding public health, how the research is done, the stats are done, and also understanding how does the business side of healthcare policy and management works within healthcare systems. Understanding the leadership role, the finance of what it takes to run a healthcare system was very fascinating to me. So I think that was a perfect combination for me.
Okay, that's awesome. And then earlier on, you were saying that during your master's here, you also were business development and strategic partnerships at Chromadex. Mm-hmm. So did you get that position before you moved back, or what was that process for getting that position? I can't remember if you mentioned.
I applied for that position. I was looking at startups specifically because I wanted to work in a more stimulating environment. I wanted to be at the beginning of a creation of a product. And ideate and innovate. So I think it was interesting to me because Chromadex was focused on a heavily science-backed up product, and they had a great leader who's my great mentor. His name is Rob Fried, and it was just an amazing experience to be part of a product that was one making a positive impact on individuals' life, which is backed by science. And also was fascinated to create different products, come up with different market researches.
And what sorts of challenges or opportunities did you see, or did you want, like, why did you want to more rather join a smaller startup than a larger one?
Because at that age, time, and space, I think I wanted to be developed into the role I was trying to be into, which was mostly business dev, partnerships, also the intersection of innovation and marketing. And that, I think, is sometimes only possible at a startup because you go horizontal, you have to wear many caps. And I absolutely enjoyed and loved it. I was able to do marketing, I was able to go after new partnerships, I was able to work on podcasts, I was able to work on the scientific advisory board membership. So it was just extremely stimulating, and it derived my curiosity to a point where I would get up every day just feeling excited about what was on my table. And it was a great leadership I worked under.
Okay, and that's awesome. And I think, like as you stated earlier, now the leader of that organization is your mentor, and you're still continuing to learn and I guess just feed off of that energy from that great relationship that you did have there. What was that balance like for you for doing this master's as well as working as this business development and strategic partnerships person?
There is nothing called a balance. It was a struggle. So I would love to be honest. It was 2 years of a lot of stress and work, because school used to be Fridays and Saturdays, and that was about 16, 18 hours, and you still have to do work, and have projects and deadlines and exams while you're working full time. If I had to do it again, I don't know if I could do it again, to be honest. I had like 4 hours of sleep, and it was overstimulating. I think I loved what I did, but I think time was constrained, and obviously timelines were tough. So someone else is doing it, and a lot of people are doing it. Kudos to you. I think it takes a lot of dedication and resiliency to get through it. So I think if you can, you should. If you don't want to, I think you shouldn't too. You should just finish your degree, then go back to work. There is no rush. I think career and life I learned that it's a longer process.
Yes, absolutely. And yeah, I think balance is a very up in the air kind of word. What is balance? I think we're all searching for that, and I don't think we're going to find it very soon. Thank you for sharing that. Did you have any other like big takeaways from doing this master's in public health, or like working that you wanted to share as well?
I think it really disciplines and kind of dials into the problems of what's existent in your city or state, because you do a lot of research, kind of understand the problems that are existent. And then you also get to be around people who are one surgeons and higher up in their career to be CFOs who are in the class with you, trying to advance and move into healthcare management. So I saw a lot of doctors and nurses who wanted to get in the management side of healthcare to make an impact, and to make decisions, right? Because as doctors and as physicians, you don't get to make these decisions. So when you're in the management side, you're able to drive either policy changes or managerial changes in order to make physicians' life better and also give a better experience and output for patient care. So that to me was fascinating, that people who had that experience want to get healthcare management side. So I think for anyone, the takeaway is focus on the healthcare system in a holistic view, which is look at physicians, look at the patient outcome, look at the back end of the healthcare system, basically look at the entire value chain. I think that's the biggest interesting part, was to look at the entire chain, not just a piecemeal format.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's important to note and for people to just understand that a lot of the times physicians, nurses, they don't really have that same skill set as a CEO or just like a manager in a health system. And I think it goes to show like there's just so many different interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary roles and people coming together to create all these, whether it's in a health system or in a different type of health organization. There's just so many different skill sets that you can build on. Like a physician would be a great physician, but they might be a bad CEO for a hospital because they just don't know the business management or the patient outcomes or whatever the case might be. And I think it's important to know that even though this person might have like this advanced education in something specific, they mightn't have that same skill set or understanding of this other thing that you have had the knowledge and the experience to get during whatever experience that is, whether that's school or conference or certificate or whatever the case might be. So just wanted to share that as well. Was your degree in public health worth it looking back on it now?
Oh yes, absolutely. I think it really, especially now where we are with COVID and going through life, I think it's really put me in the position where I'm able to think about public health, think about impact, and then also work internally where I'm working right now, drive how we make decisions, solutions, and think about sustainability. And also in the board members in a couple of organizations I am part of, it really helps me become more passionate and be more empathetic towards different demographics and especially the vulnerable communities, to see how we can further use technology or healthcare systems to accelerate and make their lives better.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad to hear that public health has been useful to you and you appreciate that degree, because we all love public health. And if you're listening to this show, I'm guessing you love public health too. So I'm glad to hear that. So then you graduated, and as you said, you wanted to experience more of that one-on-one connection with people and really delving into those different skill sets. And now you're coming back with all this knowledge that you gained from there, and now you're able to incorporate it into this new role that you're able to take on now. So what do you do in this role?
I drive business strategy within healthcare and do a lot of marketing. So it means new relationships building, client relationships management, market research, attending conferences, events, and also driving strategy and coming up with new perspectives and POVs for solutions for our clients. Okay,
that's awesome. How I'm guessing Tata Consultancy is like a huge organization. Am I right?
Yes, it is. So it's a sub of the parent Tata company, which is a $200 billion revenue, about 500,000 employees globally. So it is a big organization.
The people that are able to both harness like the hard skill sets as well as have those soft skill sets and really be able to be personable and really relate with people are the people that really drive forward success in their career in the long term. So that is awesome that you named that to get into like this $200 billion organization. You need all these soft skills and to really focus on that. And as you said, like be curious. And I think we all should continue to be curious and be able to learn, and because there's so much out there to learn. And as we continue to that's just like the growth mindset that you have to continue to build on your career or build on the knowledge that you want to just have a better life from all the experiences that you have had in the past and build onto that. So I really like that advice. So thank you for sharing that. And do you work on a team at the Tata Consultancy Services?
We have many teams, so yes, I kind of juggle between many teams, but yes, within primarily the healthcare account, so that's the main. They call it the family team, the foundational team, and then all the other teams and units are cross-functional, sometimes cross-industrial. Yeah.
Okay, that's awesome. I don't even know what kind of questions to ask you around that. Like the pandemic especially has shown how versatile or different types of fields that they are pulling in more public health people to work in, like the hotel industry, for example. A lot of hotels are hiring like epidemiologists or just people on their staff who understand like disease and disease spreading and disease mitigation. And that's going to be the case for a lot of other organizations. Plus, I think that public health has some very interesting skill sets that can be integrated into like all these industries and can bring value. So it's really just understanding how you can speak up for your skill sets and say, this is how I can do this work and be impactful in your organization. And I think that's what a lot of people highlight. And that's what I think I'm trying to do more on this show, is get people in like untraditional or like roles that you don't think about, or taking untraditional paths like yourself to do a lot of this work that we consider like public health, quote unquote, for people who aren't watching video. But yeah, I love that a lot. So I know I wanted to also create some space for you to talk about like food equity. You're a food equity advocate, so I wanted to create some space for you to just talk more about that.
I'm passionate about obviously food, nutrition, raw veganism. But as we talk about healthcare and public health, we eat food every day. It's a basic need. And for a lot of people, obviously, under the poverty line, there's lack of knowledge on understanding what is a healthy food or having access to it because of either the lack of economic empowerment, transportation, many of the reasons. But that's a space I passionately work and volunteer. I'm also on the board of a couple of organizations. One is Nourish California, which drives food policy for the state of California. And then I work with there's a company called Yoga Care US, which works on health and wellness equity in Chicago. So that's kind of where my passion space lies, to understand how can we fix this foundational block. And a lot of organizations focusing on that as well. Walmart, CVS, they're all focusing on food insecurity. How do we make the basic food, supplements, nutrition accessible to especially the vulnerable communities? And how do they use technology and policies to refine and accelerate the process?
Okay, and yeah, I think like the food discussion is a fascinating one, because it goes from local to global real quickly when you're dealing with food and how people get food and where people's food is coming from, and that in itself creates its own issues, barriers, opportunities, and as you said, like I think as we advance in technology, it's important that we are able to affect and help those most marginalized groups, people that don't have access to healthy foods. They don't have access to the funds to buy healthy foods. They don't have transportation to healthy foods. There are a lot of barriers around food in general, but I think it's so important that we do continue to speak about these opportunities to create better and more equitable food systems and get people healthy food, because as we know, it's a basic need and it drives a lot of our lifestyle and how we live as people and as humans. So I think it's important, and looking forward to looping back to you to talk more about food equity on whatever kind of panel we set up in the future. So once again, hold me accountable, you all. If you don't see it in a couple months, DM me and ask.
I will hunt you down.
Awesome. So you also mentioned that you're on a couple different boards around food equity. What was that process for you, or like why did you want to be on boards around this type of work?
One, mostly I definitely wanted to understand how they drive policy, and they have the firsthand view into understanding, the main problems. They do a lot of policy research work. So I wanted to get the first scope into the research, the results of what's happening around us. And secondly, also understanding how does policy work? Like how long does it take from, creating one to execution? How successful are we? And then I wanted to bring in my skill sets strategically, either in marketing or partnership development, and advise them as to how they can accelerate the process and also create a fun foundation for the organization to function better. So to me, it's a big learning curve, and I'm hoping I can add value to these organizations by just bringing my strategic mindset.
I love your perspective of more so. I'm not bringing as much as I'm coming here to learn and share from what I'm learning and my perspective of how I can be impactful on that. And I think it is interesting, as you said, like the policy behind it is hugely so important to getting the type of outcomes and like the sustainability that we need. And that process in itself is, as you know, it's long, and there's a lot of barriers and a lot of different things that have to be done for different policies to pass. And then even when those policies pass, you would think that, okay, I passed this policy, this one thing is going to happen, but then there may be unintentional consequences that come with that policy and all these other things. But it is what we have to get to is getting to like those policies that are able to empower the most amounts of people or populations to take back control of their health and the food that they're eating. So I appreciate that, and I love your perspective on that. And I think they are very lucky to have someone like you with all your varied skill sets and knowledge and everything to talk to. So that is awesome.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
You are most welcome. You're most welcome. So I also wanted to talk a little bit more about your certified raw vegan and you're a nutritionist, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So how does one go about becoming a certified raw vegan chef?
You just have to go to culinary school, find a plant-based culinary school. There are a couple. One is my favorite, Matthew Kenny. He's based in Los Angeles. So you just go to school, spend maybe close to a year learning some chef skills. If you're already, a chef, then you just need to maybe go upgrade your certificate or something like that. There must be a smaller process for that.
Earlier on, I think you graduated, it was from your bachelor's, and then you went into your yoga studio, you went into your raw vegan chef life. How has that all played out throughout your entire career up to now? Like, have you been like actively being a chef, or is this just like you're chefing for or cooking for yourself, or like what does that look like in your day-to-day life?
So I have not practiced my chef skills in public. So that's not something I do anymore. I would love to, pre-COVID, I would do a lot of workshops to just teach people how to make plant-based recipes, which I enjoyed. And I would love to do that once we're out of the whole COVID world and we're able to, mingle more. But I think in terms of a raw vegan nutritionist, I still help my family and loved ones. Professionally, I don't really function in that realm. I'm mostly passionate about the healthcare and the tech world and definitely public health. So I think, but personally, I practice raw veganism. I still do a lot of yoga. I believe in the power of food and how that can impact someone's life. So that's something I practice and hope to practice lifelong.
Yeah, and food like it's a huge part of culture as well, and cultural identity in there as well. So if this is also like tangential, and if you don't have an answer, that's fine as well. But what is like a go-to recipe for a plant-based meal that you would tell someone that they should make or look into?
They should look at my favorite. It's called the kelp noodles. It's basically an extract of seaweed, and you massage it in a creamy sauce, mostly cashew, and you put some peppers and spices and let it marinate, and then you eat it. It's high in iodine, and that's like 76 minerals. But that's the nutrition side. But it tastes great if you get the recipe right. There's a bunch online. There's a cashew kelp pepper recipe you should be able to find. That's maybe a little complicated, but the easiest ones are obviously smoothies.
Thank you, and I will try to find those recipes and link them in the show for anyone that is interested in checking it out. And then my last question around this is: let's say someone is interested in getting more into whether that's raw vegan or just vegan, plant-based diet. What are some tips that you would give them?
I would say, one, be realistic, understand, set the intent, like why are you doing, what are you doing? Is it just because everyone else is doing it? Is something your own calling? So get some clarity on the intent. And once you're clear on that, then do some research on what's actually what are the things you can actually do, which is realistic? Can it be 100%? Some people are like, I'm just going to go 100% vegan, and then they can't do it, right? So set realistic goals and then have fun with it. Nothing is, there's no perfect formula, not one size fits all. Everyone is different. So I would say be kind to yourself, explore, try some new recipes. And then if you're really into it, then I would say, learn some more recipes, get into it, go to culinary school if that's something you're really attracted to. So I would say be kind to yourself and just explore initially. That's my best advice.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think it's like, even if you could try to have like a plant-based day a week or something like that, and then go from there and see how that goes, or like a meatless day or plant-based, however you want to frame it for yourself. Because I think it is important, and as a society, they tell us we need to eat a lot of meat, which is not the case. And I think it's important that we identify that there's a lot of value and protein and nutrition that you can get from plant-based diets, as well as just like the environmental benefits that you are giving back to the world, being someone that is being plant-based and being intentional around that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the other point is, one has to realize the value of why they're doing what they're doing. Then it's not forced, then it's more of a joy. So that's where they need to psychologically create that mind shift and get there, right? So I don't really personally tell someone you need to go plant-based or need to go vegan, because that's me forcing upon my thought process on them. So unless they're able to realize the impact, the value, and how the decisions have a consequence, then it's still forced. So I allow people to expand and discover things by themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's just in general in public health, is like you can't force anyone to do something healthy. You can make it more enticing, and whether that's from like policies or whether that's from like marketing and branding perspective. But at the end of the day, it is up to that person to decide. And like, as you're saying, it is that why are we doing this? What is the thing that is behind your reasoning for doing this that's really going to push you to either continue to do it, not do it for very long, or do it sporadically, whatever the case might be. So that's important to highlight there. So thank you for sharing that. And okay, so I'm gonna ask you, where would you like to see yourself in the future? But before I ask you that, I just wanted to create some space in case you wanted to share anything else with your like very unique perspective on public health and like tech and innovation. Is there anything that you'd like to share with people?
I think there's a lot of information out there. I feel overwhelmed many times about the innovations, the creativity, the solutions, the startups, and the policies. I would say, I've learned, or I'm trying to learn, that you can only do so much as an individual. So try to do your best. You're always making an impact as long as you're contributing. So I think my only space for advice is be kind to yourself. There's a lot of rat races going on. So, you're still moving. As long as you're moving, I think
I like that. And thank you for sharing that. Okay. So where would you like to see yourself in the future? And this could be future, however you want to view it. Maybe it's 5 years, maybe it's 10 years, maybe it's 50 years, whatever you want to view it as.
In 5 years, I'm hoping I made some significant impact project or work where I'm able to drive and continuously driving. I don't know what that is. In 5 years. Also, personally, I think I should have traveled to more countries by then. And I'm hoping I've expanded more and grown more into my career and personally and professionally as a person. So that's kind of what I see. I don't believe in, clearly my whole career path, the education path is very non-linear. I think I'm looking for more expansion, more experiences, and definitely empowering other people to become better and also give back to the community.
Yeah, and I love that, because a lot of us think like we have to have everything figured out, and that is not the case. You know that you want to make an impact, you're not sure how, and I think that might be the case for a lot of us out there. It's like, we want to do something bigger than ourselves to really improve life for others or communities around us, and there's so many ways to do that, and continually learning how to do that, I think is so important. And I hope that you're able to get out and travel to more places as well. That's something that I'm also trying to do. If there's one place you wanted to travel to, where would it be?
Oh boy. So I used to travel a lot before COVID. I would try to go to 4 or 5 new countries a year. Since COVID, obviously, I have not. I've been to at least 43 countries as of today. The next spot I think in my bucket list is obviously doing the hike, the W2 in Argentina, the Patagonia hike, and then I would love to go check out the Faroe Islands, which is I believe falls at the south of Iceland. So I'm a nature person, so I would love to go to those two spots as my next destination.
Okay, awesome. I hope that you're able to get out there. That sounds awesome, and definitely don't hear people say Faroe Islands a lot of the times, but I'm glad you did say that. That's great to hear. And then moving you on to the Furious Five, the last section of the show, the 5 questions I ask all guests. So number 1, what advice would you give to a student trying to pursue a career in public health?
My advice would be think non-linear, think expansion. There is no one way. Even if you do have a degree in public health, you could land at any position, any job which is not in healthcare. So I would say use any opportunity to find someone who could grow you, mold you, and also be a part of the process.
Great advice. Number 2, if you're talking to someone wanting to get into your position, what advice would you give them?
Oh boy, I don't know about someone wanting to get exactly in my position, but clearly if you have to get into my position, you just have to be like a ping pong ball all over the place, kind of absorbing different experiences, talent, and understanding how the whole ecosystem works. I think to get into my position, one line would be curious, understand human psychology, work with a lot of empathy, and have clear intent on what kind of impact you want to be. And also be clear about your strength skills. For example, mine is I'm a people person. I love facing clients. I also love thinking strategically and solving problems. So hone into your skills and also work with companies who want to make a similar impact and match your values. So those are the pointers I would give someone.
Okay, awesome. Number 3, what's something you are working on improving in your life right now?
There are many, many things I'm working on a daily basis. Couple of things I can think, actually 2 things, not one. One is the ability to say no. I love helping people. I say yes to many things, which I'm able to, commit and deliver to, but sometimes no is a good answer, so I'm working on that. The other one is I'm definitely learning to be kind to myself. I think that's a lifelong process to practice self-compassion. I think it's easier for me to give compassion to others, but I think self-compassion is important because I find it more of an opportunity to grow and expand and be a better person every day.
Great things to work on, and I think we all could work on those things. So thank you for sharing that. Number 4, professionally, do you recommend anything?
Professionally, I recommend listening to and reading a lot of books on psychology. I think that creates a lot of mind shift on how you want to show up as a leader, as a team member, personally, professionally, solve problems, because I think issues such as organizational behavior, empathy, sustainability, and how we solve problems in public health or technology stems from, I think, at a foundational psychology of human behavior. So I would professionally recommend people to start working on their interpersonal skills and then develop their professional skills.
Okay, great advice. And then last but not least, where can people connect with you?
LinkedIn, they can find me as my full name, Smriti Kirubanandan. I'll be there. Pretty active on LinkedIn, like it's Instagram, but I'll be right there.
I think LinkedIn is the new Instagram, and I'm liking it. I'm liking it a lot.
It is, I think so. I think so too for the professionals.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm going to be sure to link your LinkedIn in the description as well as the show notes. So be sure to check that out, to connect with Simi and just see how she can be helpful to you if that is what you want, or because I think she has a wealth of knowledge on a bunch of things that I think could be very helpful for public health students or people who are thinking about like these untraditional or less traditional public health rules that they are out there. But thank you so much for coming on and chatting and sharing your story. I think I enjoyed this a lot. I learned a lot, and I hope that all others that are listening learn a lot as well.
Thank you, Amar. It was a pleasure. Thank you for holding space and giving me the opportunity to share my experience and background. Hopefully, this is useful for the people who are listening to this show. And if any way I can help.
Yeah, and then one last time, you all hold me accountable for this food equity panel discussion that we're going to have sometime in 2022. If you don't see anything in a couple of months, couple of weeks, DM me and I will get to work on that. So just putting that out there one more time for everyone. But thank you all for listening. Thank you all for watching this. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't subscribed as yet. Leave a like, share with a friend. It greatly helps the show get out to more people and just helps more people in their public health navigate their public health careers. If you want to support, there's a link in the bio to buymeacoffee.com/the PH Millennial, and you can support there. But if not, just be sure to like and subscribe, and I greatly appreciate that. See you all next week.